I first noticed it when Mrs. Abernathy came in for her weekly shopping. "The usual today?" I asked, and her eyes widened slightly. "Yes, Frank," she said, placing her reusable bag on the counter. "Though I think I'll skip the tuna this week. Doctor says I should watch my mercury." I nodded and rang up her items without comment. 2 cans of split pea soup. 1 loaf of sourdough, sliced thin. Half a pound of turkey, shaved not sliced. 1 red onion. A small bottle of olive oil, Italian, not Spanish. 4 Granny Smith apples. 1 bar of 72% dark chocolate. And normally, 2 cans of chunk light tuna in water. But not today. As I bagged her groceries, I could feel her staring at me. Most people in Millfield shopped at the Super Save on the edge of town, but a loyal few still came to my place, Harmon's Market, right on Main Street where it had stood for 53 years. My father opened it in 1972. I took over in 1998 when his hands got too arthritic to work the register. "Frank," Mrs. Abernathy said as I handed her the receipt. "How did you know my usual order? I don't think I've ever told you." I smiled the smile I practiced in the mirror. Friendly, but not too friendly. "Just doing my job, Mrs. Abernathy. You've been coming in every Thursday at 10:15 for 6 years now. You're consistent." She nodded slowly, but something in her expression shifted. A wariness that hadn't been there before. "See you next week," I said, still smiling as she left. That was my first mistake. Being too specific. I've always had a good memory. That's what my mother used to say before she left. "Frankie remembers everything," she'd tell visitors like it was something to be proud of. Dad was less impressed. "That boy catalogs everything like it's inventory," he'd grunt. "Ain't natural." But it was useful in the grocery business. I knew what sold and what didn't. I knew who bought what, when they bought it, and how often. I knew their patterns, their preferences, their peculiarities. I knew the town of Millfield through its groceries. Sheriff Parker came in every Monday and Friday, always between 3:30 and 4 p.m., after his shift. 2 6-packs of Coors Light. A family-size bag of tortilla chips. Medium salsa, never hot. And those little powdered donuts his wife thought he'd given up after his cholesterol scare last year. "Our secret," he'd say with a wink, and I'd nod, not telling him that his wife, Diane, had already been in that morning, her eyes red-rimmed again, buying a pint of whiskey she'd hide in the laundry detergent bottle where she thought he wouldn't find it. I knew everyone's secrets, or at least the ones they revealed through their purchases. The mayor's son with the condoms and the energy drinks. Mrs. Wilson from the library with her romance novels and box of wine. Old Mr. Peterson with his cat food but no cat. I kept it all organized in what I called the ledger. Not an actual book, that would be too obvious. The ledger was in my head, every purchase, every pattern, every deviation carefully noted and filed away. It wasn't until Sarah Nichols moved to town that I realized how much the ledger had come to rule my life. Sarah started coming to Harmon's Market on Wednesdays. No set time. Sometimes morning, sometimes evening. Her purchases were erratic. One week, ingredients for an elaborate pasta dish. The next, nothing but cereal and milk. Sometimes fresh produce, sometimes just junk food. Sometimes a bottle of expensive wine, sometimes cheap beer. She defied categorization, and it bothered me more than I cared to admit. "You're Frank Harmon, right?" she asked on her 4th visit. "The owner?" "Yes," I said, scanning her items. Hummus. Pita chips. Spring mix. Goat cheese. Balsamic vinegar. A pomegranate. And a magazine about home decorating. "I'm Sarah. Just moved into the old Wilkinson place on Elm." She smiled, and something in my chest tightened. Everyone said I should shop at the Super Save, but I like supporting local businesses. "Appreciate that," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Not many people do these days." "Well, I'm not many people," she said, and I looked up from the register to meet her eyes. They were green, with flecks of gold around the pupils. "No," I agreed. You're not. Sarah became a regular, but an unpredictable one. And for the first time in years, I found myself looking forward to a customer's visits, wondering what she would buy, what it might tell me about her day, her mood, her life. I started making special orders with her in mind. Imported cheeses, unusual fruits, artisanal chocolates, things no one else in Millfield would buy. When she'd pick them up, her face would light up, and she'd ask how I knew she'd like them. Just a guess, I'd say. But it wasn't a guess. I was studying her, learning her, trying to construct a pattern where there wasn't one. That was my second mistake. Becoming invested. 6 months after Sarah moved to town, Sheriff Parker came into the store on a Tuesday. Not Monday, not Friday. Tuesday. At 11:17 a.m. Not after his shift. My internal alarm bells rang immediately. "Morning, Frank," he said, but he wasn't looking for donuts or beer. His eyes scanned the empty store. "Quiet today, huh? Usually is on Tuesday mornings," I replied, wiping down the counter. "What can I help you with, Sheriff?" He leaned against the lottery ticket display. "Had some concerns raised in the community. Thought I'd stop by, have a chat." My hands stilled on the counter. "Concerns? Mrs. Abernathy mentioned something interesting the other day. Said you knew her entire shopping list by heart, down to the brand of olive oil." I forced a laugh. "Well, she's been shopping here for years. Most of my regulars have their habits." "That's so?" Parker ran a finger along the edge of the counter. "Diane mentioned something similar. Said you always give her a knowing look when she buys her special items." My pulse quickened. "I'm afraid I don't know what you mean, Sheriff." "She thinks you know about her drinking problem, Frank." His voice hardened. "She thinks you've been watching her. I'm a grocery store owner, Sheriff. I observe what people buy. It helps me stock appropriately." "Uh-huh." He straightened up. "And what about Sarah Nichols?" My mouth went dry. "What about her?" "She mentioned you've been ordering specialty items. Things she never asked for but somehow match her tastes perfectly." He tilted his head. "She found that a little unsettling." "I was just trying to expand my inventory," I said. "Bring in some higher-end products. It's good business." "Maybe." Sheriff Parker walked toward the door, then turned back. "But maybe you should stick to stocking what people actually ask for, Frank. And maybe you should be a little less observant about your customers' habits. Makes folks uncomfortable." After he left, I stood motionless behind the counter, my heart hammering in my chest. For the first time, I saw the ledger not as a tool or a talent, but as what it truly was, a violation. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Sarah's face, imagining her discomfort, her fear. Had I misread everything? Had my attention seemed like stalking to her? I decided I needed to apologize, to explain. I had her address, of course. The old Wilkinson place on Elm. I'd never been there. I'd never gone to any customer's home. But this was different. This was important. That was my third mistake. Crossing the line. I drove to Sarah's house after closing the store. It was nearly 8 p.m., but lights glowed behind her curtains. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, rehearsing what I would say. How I would explain the ledger without sounding completely unhinged. Finally, I walked up to her door and knocked. When she opened it, her smile faltered. "Frank? What are you doing here?" "I needed to talk to you," I said. "About what you told Sheriff Parker." Her expression shifted to wariness. "Maybe this isn't a good time." "Please," I said. "Just 5 minutes. I can explain." She hesitated, then stepped back to let me in. Her living room was warm, filled with books and plants. A half-empty glass of the Argentinian Malbec I'd ordered specially for the store, for her, sat on the coffee table. "Sheriff Parker came to see me today," I began. "He said you were uncomfortable with me ordering things specifically for you." Sarah crossed her arms. "It's just strange, Frank. I never told you what wines I like, what cheeses I prefer, But somehow you know. It feels like you've been studying me. I have a good memory, I said. I remember what everyone buys. It's always been that way. But it's more than that, isn't it? She said quietly. Mrs. Abernathy mentioned that you recited her entire shopping list from memory. Mr. Peterson says you ask about his non-existent cat. The Johnsons say you comment on their daughter's college schedule based on when they buy extra groceries. She took a deep breath. People are talking, Frank. They're scared. Of me? The thought was absurd. I'm just the grocery store guy. Who knows everything about everyone? She said. Who watches? Who remembers? Who shows up at people's houses uninvited? I felt sick. I didn't mean to frighten anyone. I certainly didn't mean to frighten you. Then why are you here, Frank? Her voice was gentle but firm. How do you know where I live? The old Wilkinson place on Elm, I said automatically. You told me when you first came into the store. I told you I moved into the old Wilkinson place. I never specified which one, and there are 3 on Elm Street. Her eyes narrowed. Did you follow me home, Frank? No, I protested. I just asked around. Asked who? About me specifically? Why? I didn't have a good answer. Not one that wouldn't make things worse. I think you should go, she said. I nodded and moved toward the door. Then I noticed something on her bookshelf. A leather-bound notebook, just visible between 2 larger books. The word, ledger, was embossed on the spine. I froze. Sarah followed my gaze. Problem? What's that book? I asked, pointing. She glanced at it casually. Just a journal. For work. It says ledger. Yes. I'm a journalist. I keep notes. She moved subtly, positioning herself between me and the bookshelf. Frank, I really think you should leave now. But I couldn't move. A journalist. Taking notes. Asking questions around town. About me. You're not just shopping at my store to support a local business, are you? I said slowly. You've been investigating me. Sarah's expression hardened. I don't know what you're talking about. The ledger, I whispered. That's what I call it too. The record I keep. Of everyone. Everything they buy. Everything they reveal about themselves. I took a step toward her. How did you know about that? She backed away. Frank, you're scaring me. Who told you? I demanded. Was it Sheriff Parker? Did he put you up to this? I'm calling the police, she said, reaching for her phone. They're already involved, aren't they? My voice sounded strange, distant. This whole thing, you moving here, coming to my store, getting close to me, it was all to confirm their suspicions. Frank, please. What are they suspicious of, exactly? I asked. That I have a good memory? That I pay attention? That I know this town better than anyone because I see what they try to hide? It's not just that, Sarah said, her phone in her hand now. After Melissa Davis disappeared 3 years ago, my blood ran cold. What does Melissa have to do with anything? She was last seen at your store, Sarah said. And you were the only one who noticed the changed shopping patterns in 4 different households the week after she vanished. Shopping patterns that suggested a teenage girl was suddenly living somewhere she hadn't been before. I reported what I saw, I said. I was trying to help. By keeping detailed records of every purchase everyone in town made? Sarah's finger hovered over her phone. Records you never showed anyone? Information you kept to yourself until it suited you to reveal it? You don't understand, I said. The ledger isn't something I choose to keep. It's just there, in my head. Always has been. And what else is in there, Frank? She asked. What other secrets are you keeping? I felt the walls closing in. The careful life I'd built, the quiet existence I'd maintained, all crumbling because I'd made 3 simple mistakes. Being too specific. Becoming invested. Crossing the line. I have to go, I said. I think that's best, Sarah agreed, her phone still ready. As I walked to the door, she called after me. Frank? The police will want to talk to you again. Soon. About Melissa. About everything. I nodded without turning around. I'll be at the store. Same as always. Outside, the night air felt thick and oppressive. I got into my car and sat there, staring at Sarah's house. Through the window, I could see her on the phone, pacing, reporting back, planning their next move. I started the engine and drove slowly back to town, to the apartment above my store where I'd lived all my adult life. Where the ledger had grown from a peculiarity into a burden, and now, apparently, into evidence. As I parked behind the store, I noticed Sheriff Parker's cruiser idling across the street, its headlights dark. Watching. Waiting. I smiled and waved, knowing he could see me in the streetlight's glow. Then I unlocked the store's back door and went inside, up the narrow stairs to my apartment. In the small living room, I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. The cursor blinked on a blank document. They think the ledger is a physical thing, I thought. Asterisk, something they can find. Something they can use. Asterisk. They didn't understand. They couldn't. The ledger wasn't something I wrote down. It was something I lived. Every day. Every customer. Every purchase. Every pattern. Every secret. And now they wanted to take it from me. To take me from it. I began to type, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Not the ledger, that existed only in my mind. But something else. Something new. A record of 3 mistakes. And a plan to ensure I wouldn't make a 4th. Outside, the sheriff's cruiser started its engine. Headlights pierced the darkness. Morning was still hours away, but already I could feel time running out. Soon they would come with questions I couldn't answer, accusations I couldn't refute. But that was all right. By then, I would be gone. And the ledger would go with me. To a new town. With new customers. New patterns. New secrets. After all, everyone needs groceries. I first noticed him on a Tuesday in September at the park with my 5-year-old daughter, Ellie. I was half watching her, half scrolling through emails when something made me look up. He stood partially hidden behind an oak tree. A boy, maybe 8 or 9, with dark hair cut in a severe style. He wore pressed khaki pants and a button-up shirt, like he was dressed for picture day. And he was perfectly still, watching the other children play. Not playing. Just watching. His stillness unsettled me. Children fidget. They bounce and sway. This boy was motionless, only his eyes moving as they tracked the other kids. "Do you see that boy?" I asked Angela, another mom nearby. She followed my gaze. "Oh. Him. Yeah, I've seen him before. Weird little kid. Do you know who he belongs to? Never seen a parent with him. He just shows up, watches, then leaves. Never plays." When Ellie ran over for a snack, I pointed him out. "Ellie, do you know that boy over there?" She looked, then quickly turned away. "That's the Watcher," she said, digging through my bag. "The Watcher?" Something cold slid down my spine. "That's what the kids call him. He comes to watch us play. He never plays. He just watches. Has he ever talked to you?" Ellie shook her head. "He doesn't talk. He just takes pictures in his head." "What do you mean?" "That's what Maddie says. He takes pictures in his head of all the kids playing so he can remember us." I looked back. He was gone. Over the next few weeks, I saw the boy, the Watcher, several more times. Always alone, always watching. I asked other parents, but most seemed unconcerned. "Some kids are just shy," one father told me. "Probably on the spectrum," suggested a mother who taught special education. No one knew who he was or where he came from. No one had ever seen him with a parent. He just appeared, watched, then vanished. I found myself watching him as much as he watched the children. There was something off about his demeanor, something too controlled, too adult. The way his eyes moved methodically from child to child, studying their movements. One afternoon I approached him. I waited until Ellie was safely occupied, then walked toward where he stood. He saw me coming and stiffened slightly. "Hi there," I said. "I'm Ellie's mom. I see you here a lot. What's your name?" He said nothing, just stared with dark, evaluating eyes. "Are you waiting for someone? Your parents?" A long pause. "I'm not supposed to talk to you." His voice was soft, precise. "Why not?" "Because you'll ask questions. Like now. I'm just wondering who you're here with. It's not safe for a kid your age to be alone." "I'm not alone," he said. "I'm with them." He gestured toward the playground. "But there's no adult watching you. Where are your parents?" "At home." "And where is home?" He pointed vaguely. "There." "What's your name?" I tried again. Another pause. "Noah," he finally said. "Well, Noah, maybe next time you could play with the other kids instead of just watching?" "I don't play," he said flatly. "I observe." "Observe?" "For the study." A chill ran through me. "What study?" But Noah had decided the conversation was over. Without another word, he turned and walked away, his gait strangely measured. That night, I called local schools. No student named Noah matched his description. I lay awake thinking about him. "He takes pictures in his head so he can remember us," Ellie had said. "For the study," Noah had told me. What kind of study involved watching children play? The next day, I took Ellie to a different park across town. We were there less than 30 minutes when I spotted him. Same clothes, same stillness, same watchfulness. When he saw me notice him, he didn't look away. He held my gaze, then deliberately turned his attention back to the children. I felt anger rise in me. I told Ellie to stay put and marched over to him. "Noah, what are you doing here? Are you following us?" He blinked slowly. "Not you. Just the children. That's not okay. You can't follow kids around like this. Where are your parents?" "They're not available." "Then I'm calling someone who can find them," I said, pulling out my phone. "You're the only one who's uncomfortable," he said with eerie calmness. "The others don't notice me. I'm good at being invisible. I'm calling the police." At the word police, his expression changed, a flicker of fear. Then it was gone. "That would be counterproductive," he said. I was already dialing when he spoke again. "I'm collecting behavioral data for my father's research study." I paused. "What?" "My father is a developmental psychologist at the university. He's studying play behaviors in children. I'm helping collect observational data." It sounded rehearsed, but plausible. "Your father sends you to spy on children?" "Not spy. Observe. It's scientific." "Then why isn't he here? Why haven't you explained this to anyone?" "He's busy. Most adults don't ask. They assume I'm waiting for someone." He looked at my phone. "Please don't call the police. My father will be upset." "What's your father's name? And which university?" "Dr. Aaron Langley. Westridge University." I made a note. "I'm checking this out." "I'm not lying," he said, emotion finally entering his voice. "But I need to go now." Before I could stop him, he walked quickly away. That evening, I searched for Dr. Langley online. There was indeed a developmental psychologist by that name at Westridge, focusing on childhood social dynamics. I emailed him about meeting his son Noah. His response came the next morning. "Dear Ms. Riley, I am conducting studies on childhood development, but there's been a misunderstanding. I don't have a son named Noah, nor do I employ children as research assistants. All my studies are conducted with parental consent and adult research assistants. I'm concerned about what you've described. If someone is claiming to collect data from me, they are misrepresenting themselves. Could you provide details about this child and your encounters? Best regards, Dr. Aaron Langley." My hands trembled. I replied with a description and called the police to file a report. The officer who took my call seemed unconcerned. This kid isn't actually approaching the children? No, but he's watching them and lying about why. Without criminal activity, there's not much we can do. I hung up, frustrated but determined. Over the next week, I returned to the park daily. Noah appeared twice, always watching. When he saw me approach, he would leave immediately. I showed his photo to other parents. Few recognized him. One mother thought she'd seen him getting into a silver sedan. Another remembered him talking to a man in a dark jacket. Then, as I was describing Noah to another parent, a woman with gray hair interrupted us. Are you talking about a boy in khakis who watches children? Dark hair, very still? Yes, I said. Do you know him? Not here, she said quietly. We moved to a coffee shop. The woman, Marion, was a retired pediatric nurse. 6 months ago, a colleague told me about a patient. A boy, around 9, found wandering a playground after hours. No ID, wouldn't give his name. Noah? I asked. They called him John. What struck my friend was his behavior, eerily calm, spoke like an adult, completely unafraid. That sounds like him. He'd been reported missing from a group home. He'd been in the system since age 2. No family. A foster kid? Marion's expression darkened. Not exactly. It was a specialized treatment center for children with severe psychiatric disorders. Children who'd exhibited dangerous behaviors. What kind of behaviors? She lowered her voice. This facility specializes in children with a rare condition. Her phone rang. She took the call outside. I sat replaying my interactions with Noah. The stillness. The watchfulness. He takes pictures in his head. What did that mean? Marion returned flustered. I have to go. Family emergency. Wait. You didn't finish telling me about Noah. She scribbled on a napkin. Look this up. But be careful. Keep your daughter away from him. The napkin read, Childhood onset conduct disorder with predatory features. I searched the term. Children with antisocial behavior, lack of empathy, predatory tendencies. Children who studied others to manipulate them. Children fascinated with documenting potential victims. He takes pictures in his head so he can remember them. I called the police again, insisting they take my concerns seriously. That night, I dreamed of Noah watching Ellie sleep. 2 days later, the police called. No treatment center reported a missing child matching Noah's description. A boy doesn't just appear out of nowhere. I insisted. We're continuing to investigate. They assured me. I didn't see Noah for over a week. I began to hope he'd moved on. I still took precautions, but my anxiety eased. Then yesterday, walking home from the park, I felt someone watching. Noah stood across the street, partially hidden behind a car. He wasn't watching Ellie. He was watching me. When our eyes met, he raised one hand in a small wave, then pointed at my house visible down the block. My heart stopped. He knew where we lived. I rushed Ellie inside and locked the door. Through the window, I could see him still watching. I called the police, but he was gone when they arrived. The officer took my statement, but I could tell he thought I was overreacting. They promised to drive by regularly. Last night, after checking all locks, I peeked into Ellie's room. She was sound asleep. Then I noticed something on her dresser that hadn't been there before. A folded piece of paper. With trembling hands, I unfolded it. Inside was a meticulously detailed drawing of our house. In front of it stood 3 figures, a woman with my hair, a small girl with Ellie's pigtails, and a boy in neatly drawn clothes. Beneath it, in careful block letters, I've been inside. I can come back any time. I'm still watching. I scooped Ellie up and carried her to my room, locking the door. We're leaving today, going to my sister's in another state. I've notified the police, but I don't expect them to find him. Because I question what Noah really is. Not supernatural, something more terrifying because it's real. A child without empathy. A child who watches and learns and waits. A child who can slip in and out of our lives undetected because we don't want to see the darkness that can exist in someone so young. I check locks constantly now. I look over my shoulder everywhere. I search every room when we come home. Because I know he's still out there. Still watching. Still taking pictures in his head. Still remembering us. The first time I saw her collecting pigeons was on a Wednesday morning in March. I was having coffee at the sidewalk cafe across from the courthouse square when she appeared, carrying what looked like a wicker picnic basket. She was probably in her 50s, with iron gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, wearing a beige trench coat despite the mild weather. There was nothing immediately alarming about her appearance. She could have been anyone's aunt or neighbor, except for the intent focus in her eyes as she surveyed the square. The courthouse square was known for its pigeons. Tourists and children fed them breadcrumbs, and the city maintenance crew grumbled about the mess. But they were as much a part of the town as the century-old oak trees or the copper-domed courthouse itself. The woman set down her basket and pulled out a small paper bag. She sprinkled what looked like birdseed in a deliberate line, leading toward the open basket. Within minutes, several pigeons were pecking their way toward her trap. With a quick, practiced movement, she slammed the lid shut when 3 birds had wandered inside. She checked to make sure no one was watching, her eyes skipping over me as if I were invisible, then hurried away, the basket tucked under her arm. I might have forgotten about it if I hadn't seen her again the next day. Same basket, same technique, different location, this time by the fountain in front of the public library. And again 2 days later in the park. Each time, she'd capture 3 or 4 pigeons and hurry away, looking furtively over her shoulder. Curiosity got the better of me. As the local newspaper's crime reporter for the past 15 years, I developed a sixth sense for strange behavior that might indicate a story. I decided to follow her. She led me through the historic district, past Victorian homes converted to law offices and boutiques, then into the residential area where modest bungalows lined quiet streets. She turned into the driveway of a pale yellow house with peeling paint and overgrown hedges. Unlike the other homes on the street, this one had all its blinds drawn. The yard was immaculate, though, not a fallen leaf or stray twig in sight. I walked past, noting the address, then circled back to my car. A quick search on my phone revealed the property belonged to Eleanor Marsh, 58, widowed, no criminal record. She'd taught second grade at Westfield Elementary until her retirement 3 years ago. Nothing suspicious there. Just a retired teacher who apparently had an unusual hobby. Still, something didn't feel right. Why was she collecting pigeons? What was she doing with them? I mentioned it to Sheriff Dan Howell the next morning during our weekly catch-up at the diner. "El Marsh?" he said, stirring his coffee. "Known her since kindergarten. Quiet lady. Her husband died about 5 years back, heart attack. She took it hard. Retired early. Keeps to herself. She's been catching pigeons," I said. 3 or 4 every day that I've seen." Dan raised an eyebrow. "That's different. But not illegal. Maybe she's rehabilitating them? Some kind of retirement hobby?" "Maybe," I conceded. But if she was running some kind of bird sanctuary, why the secrecy? Why the furtive glances? "I can stop by, check in on her if you're concerned," Dan offered. "No, it's fine," I said quickly. I didn't want to alarm her if there was an innocent explanation. "Just struck me as odd." Dan nodded and changed the subject to the county commissioner's latest scandal, but I couldn't get Eleanor Marsh and her pigeons out of my mind. The next day, I decided to approach her directly. I waited at the cafe until she appeared at the courthouse square with her basket. As she was laying out her trail of seeds, I walked over. "Excuse me," I said with my most disarming smile. "I couldn't help noticing you've been collecting pigeons. I'm Alex Morgan from the Chronicle. I'm always looking for interesting local stories, and I wondered if you'd be willing to tell me about your hobby?" She straightened up slowly, her pale blue eyes assessing me with surprising intensity. "You've been watching me," she said. It wasn't a question. "I'm observant," I replied. "It's my job." A slight smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. I'm not doing anything wrong, Mr. Morgan. I never suggested you were, Ms. Marsh. Her eyes narrowed slightly at my use of her name. The pigeons are a project, she said after a moment. For the children. The children? I volunteer with the elementary school science club, she explained. We're studying urban wildlife. The children are tracking pigeon behavior, migration patterns. It's educational. It sounded plausible enough, but something in her tone felt rehearsed. That sounds fascinating, I said. I'd love to do a feature on it. Maybe I could come by the school, take some photos of the children with their project? A flash of panic crossed her face before she composed herself. That won't be possible. School policy about media. You understand. Of course. Perhaps I could just interview you about it. At your home, maybe? No, she said sharply. Then softer. No, that wouldn't work. The birds are sensitive to strangers. It would disrupt the project. I see, I said, though I didn't. Well, here's my card. If you change your mind, I'd really love to hear more about your work with the children. She took the card between two fingers, as if it might bite her, and slipped it into her pocket. Have a nice day, Mr. Morgan, she said, and turned back to her task, clearly dismissing me. I retreated to my table at the cafe and watched as she successfully captured 4 more pigeons, then hurried away toward her house. That evening, I called Westfield Elementary and asked to speak with the science club coordinator. When I inquired about a pigeon tracking project, the teacher was puzzled. We don't have anything like that, she said. And Eleanor Marsh doesn't volunteer with us. She hasn't been back since she retired. Eleanor had lied to me. But why? The next morning, I drove past her house on my way to work. There was something different about it that I couldn't immediately identify. Then it hit me. There were now small squares of cardboard taped over portions of the windows, visible through gaps in the blinds. It was odd enough that I decided to park and take a closer look. As I approached the house, I noticed something else, the faint but unmistakable smell of ammonia. Anyone who's ever cleaned a birdcage would recognize it. But this was stronger, as if there were dozens of birds, not just a few. I was about to knock on the door when I heard a noise from the backyard, a soft, rhythmic thudding. I followed the sound, staying close to the hedge that separated Eleanor's property from her neighbor's. Through a gap in the foliage, I could see her kneeling by a freshly dug hole, tamping down soil with the back of a shovel. Beside her lay a small cardboard box, sealed with duct tape. She finished her task, picked up the box, and placed it in the hole, then began filling it with dirt. I must have made a sound, because suddenly she looked up, directly at the spot where I was watching. I ducked down, my heart pounding. When I dared to look again, she was gone, and the hole was filled in, a rectangle of darker soil, the only evidence it had been there. I retreated to my car, unsettled. What had I just witnessed? A burial? But of what? That afternoon, I returned to the sheriff's office. Dan, I think there's something wrong at Eleanor Marsh's house, I said, closing his office door behind me. He looked up from his paperwork. What kind of wrong? I told him about the cardboard on the windows, the ammonia smell, and what I'd seen in the backyard. Dan leaned back in his chair. So she's got some birds and buried something in her yard. Could be a pet that died. Still not seeing a crime here, Alex? She lied about working with the school. I insisted. And there's something off about the whole situation. Dan sighed. Look, I've known Elle since we were kids. She's eccentric, sure, especially since Robert died. But she's not dangerous. Will you at least do a welfare check? Just to make sure everything's okay? He studied my face, then nodded. Fine. I'll stop by tomorrow. But if everything looks normal, you let this go, all right? Elle's been through enough without becoming the subject of small-town gossip. I agreed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong in that yellow house. The next day, Dan called me. I checked on Elle, he said, his voice tight. You were right to be concerned. What did you find? I asked, already reaching for my notepad. This isn't for publication, Alex. Not yet. He paused. She wouldn't let me in at first. Said she was feeling under the weather. But I could smell it, that ammonia stench, like you said. And I could hear the birds. Dozens of them. When I insisted on coming in, she got agitated, said I needed a warrant. Did you get one? Didn't need to in the end. She started crying, said she couldn't stop, that they were telling her to do it. Who was telling her? The birds, Alex. She thinks the pigeons are sending her messages. My skin prickled. What kind of messages? That's the thing. She says they're telling her that Robert, her husband, isn't really dead. That his soul is trapped inside the pigeons, scattered in pieces. She's been catching them, trying to collect all the pieces so she can rebuild him. I felt cold despite the warm day. Jesus. It gets worse, Dan continued. I finally got into the house. She's got at least 50 pigeons in there, in makeshift cages. The place is filthy. But that's not the worst part. I waited, dreading what was coming next. She's been experimenting on them, trying to extract what she calls Robert's essence. The ones that don't survive, she buries in the backyard, in little coffins. The box I saw. I murmured. Yeah. We found 27 of them back there. Is she under arrest? No, she's at County General, psychiatric evaluation. Judge Winters signed the order this morning. I thanked Dan and hung up, trying to process what I'd learned. Poor Eleanor, lost in grief and delusion, thinking she could bring her husband back through these birds. 2 days later, I covered the story for the Chronicle, focusing on the mental health angle, the tragedy of untreated grief and psychosis. I mentioned the pigeons but left out the more disturbing details out of respect for Eleanor and her extended family. A week passed. Eleanor remained at the psychiatric facility, and the town's pigeons returned to their normal routines around the courthouse square. The story began to fade from local conversation, replaced by a minor scandal involving the mayor's son. Then I received a plain white envelope in my mailbox at the Chronicle. Inside was a single sheet of paper with childlike handwriting. Dear Mr. Morgan. I want to thank you for finding me. The doctors here say I'm sick, but I know the truth. Robert is waiting for me to finish my work. I only collected 74 pieces of him. There are more out there. Hundreds more. Asterisk, you seem like a nice man. I've seen you feeding the pigeons sometimes. Be careful which ones you feed. Some of them contain pieces of Robert. But some contain others. There are many souls scattered among the courthouse pigeons, Mr. Morgan. Many people in our town have contributed to the flock without knowing it. Asterisk, check the cemetery records against the pigeon population growth. You'll see I'm right. Asterisk, I'll be released soon. The doctors think their pills have made me see reason, but I'm just telling them what they want to hear. I still have work to do. Robert is waiting. And so are all the others. Asterisk. Remember, Mr. Morgan, when you look into a pigeon's eyes, someone is looking back. Sincerely, Eleanor Marsh. I crumpled the letter, then smoothed it out again. I should give it to Dan, or to Eleanor's doctors. It was evidence of her continued delusions. But something made me hesitate. An unbidden thought crept into my mind. What if she wasn't completely wrong? I found myself walking to the courthouse square during my lunch break. The pigeons were there as always, bobbing and strutting across the pavement. I watched them with new eyes, studying their movements, the way they seemed to watch the passers-by. One pigeon, larger than the others with distinctive white markings on its gray wings, separated from the flock and approached me. It stopped a few feet away, cocked its head, and fixed me with a stare that felt unsettlingly familiar. Robert? I whispered, immediately feeling foolish. The pigeon continued to stare, then abruptly took flight, circling once over my head before joining a small group of pigeons on the courthouse steps. I shook myself. Eleanor's delusion was apparently contagious. I was letting her disturbed fantasy affect my perception. But that evening, I found myself searching through the Chronicle's online archives, looking at cemetery records and comparing them to documented changes in the local pigeon population. Just out of journalistic thoroughness, I told myself. The data was incomplete, inconclusive. Of course it was. The whole idea was absurd. Yet the next day, I brought birdseed to the square. And the day after that, I began to recognize individual birds, to track their behaviors and patterns. Just research for a follow-up story, I told myself. I never saw Eleanor again. The court committed her to a state facility after she attacked an orderly who had tried to shoo a pigeon away from her window. Sometimes I drive past her yellow house, now sold to a young couple who renovated it completely, unaware of its history. But I still go to the courthouse square every day. I still feed the pigeons. And sometimes, when that large one with the white-marked wings looks at me, I can't help but wonder if Eleanor saw something the rest of us are blind to, a truth hidden behind ordinary reality, a secret written in plain sight across our town. I've started keeping notes on the pigeons, their numbers, markings, behaviors. Sometimes I check obituary dates against new arrivals to the flock. Sometimes I think I should stop. See someone? Talk about these thoughts. But then I look into their eyes, and I could swear they're trying to tell me something. Something important. Something I need to understand before it's too late. The call came in on a Tuesday morning in late October. A hiker had veered off the main trail on Blackridge Mountain and stumbled upon what he described as some kind of underground shelter, hidden among a cluster of boulders. As sheriff of Pine Creek County for the past 16 years, I'd fielded my share of unusual reports, but something in the hiker's trembling voice made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I wouldn't have even seen it if my dog hadn't caught a scent, he explained. There's a metal door built right into the rock face. It's padlocked, but I could hear something inside. Something moving. I asked if he tried to open it. No, sir, he replied quickly. Didn't feel right. Thought I should call you first. I jotted down the coordinates, thanked him, and radioed Deputy Garcia to meet me at the trailhead. Pine Creek was a town of just under 5,000 people where everyone knew each other's business, or thought they did. Secret shelters weren't common features of our landscape. As we hiked up the narrow trail, Garcia asked, "What do you think it is? Some prepper's bunker?" "Maybe," I said. "We've got a few doomsday types in the county, though most of them aren't shy about their convictions." After about 2 miles, we veered east where the hiker had marked on our map. There was no path here, just uneven terrain scattered with fallen trees and loose rock. After 20 minutes of bushwhacking, we reached a natural clearing where several massive boulders created a partial enclosure. And there it was, a steel door, approximately 3 feet by 6, built seamlessly into the rock face. It looked industrial, with a heavy-duty padlock securing a metal latch. The surrounding rock had been skillfully modified to accommodate the frame, suggesting professional installation. "Jesus," Garcia whispered. "Someone went to a lot of trouble to hide this." I approached carefully, examining the area. The ground showed signs of regular foot traffic, subtle but unmistakable to trained eyes. Someone had been visiting regularly. I pressed my ear against the cold metal, listening. At first, nothing. Then, faintly, what might have been movement. "Hello?" I called out. "This is Sheriff Nolan. If someone's in there, please respond." Silence. I tried the padlock. Heavy duty, relatively new. "What now?" Garcia asked. "We don't have probable cause for forced entry. Let's take a closer look at the surroundings," I suggested. We split up, scanning the area. I was examining a patch of disturbed earth when Garcia called out, "Sheriff, over here." She was kneeling near a pine tree, pointing at something half buried in the soil, a small girl's shoe. Pink with a butterfly decoration, sized for a child around 6 or 7 years old. And it wasn't weathered or old. Recent. That changed everything. I radioed for backup and equipment to open the door, citing possible endangerment of a minor. While waiting, I called the station to check missing children reports. Nothing in the past 6 months. The last case had been 3 years ago. Ellie Winters, age 8, presumed drowned, though her body was never recovered. When backup arrived with bolt cutters, I insisted on entering first. The padlock gave way with a sharp snap. I pulled the door open slowly, gun drawn, flashlight illuminating a narrow earthen passageway descending into darkness. The air that escaped was stale and carried an unpleasant odor, not death, but something else, unwashed bodies, waste, and the staleness of long-term habitation. "Hello?" I called down. "Sheriff's Department. Anyone down there?" No response, but the quality of the silence had changed. There was awareness in it. The passage extended about 15 feet before opening into a larger space. As we made our way down, our flashlights revealed a shelter roughly the size of a small apartment, dug out and reinforced with wooden supports. It had basic amenities: a camping toilet, a water filtration system, shelves stocked with supplies, and a gas-powered generator. But what turned my blood cold were the other details: a small mattress covered with a child's butterfly blanket, stuffed animals arranged in a semicircle, coloring books and crayons, a plastic bin containing girls' clothing, including items that matched the shoe we'd found outside. "My God!" Garcia whispered. "Someone's keeping a child here." A faint sound came from behind a makeshift curtain in the far corner. I motioned for Garcia to stay back and approached slowly. "Hello?" I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm Sheriff Nolan. I'm here to help. You're safe now." I gently pulled the curtain aside. Huddled in the corner was a girl, perhaps 9 or 10 years old, with tangled brown hair and eyes wide with fear. She wore dirty jeans and a too large flannel shirt. I holstered my weapon immediately and knelt down, keeping some distance between us. "It's okay," I said softly. "No one's going to hurt you. We're here to take you home." The girl's expression changed at the word home. Not relief, but confusion or fear. "What's your name, sweetheart?" I asked. She studied me before whispering. "Lily." That wasn't the name of any missing child in our records. "Lily what? What's your last name?" She shook her head, either unwilling or unable to answer. "How long have you been here, Lily?" "Since the bad time." "The bad time?" "When the snow was high. He brought me here to be safe." "That could have meant last winter, potentially months of captivity." "Who brought you here, Lily? Who takes care of you?" Her eyes darted nervously to the entrance. "The mountain man. He says he's my real daddy." The uncertainty in her voice suggested she didn't entirely believe this claim. "And your other family? Before the mountain man?" Her face clouded. "I'm not supposed to talk about them. They're gone now. The mountain man says they didn't want me anymore." Garcia approached and knelt beside me. "Lily," she said gently, "when will the mountain man come back?" The girl's eyes widened. "Today. He comes when the sun touches the big rock. He brings food and books." I checked my watch. If the big rock referred to one of the larger formations visible from the entrance, we had perhaps 2 hours before sunset would reach it. We radioed for additional support and a female officer from social services. While we waited, I continued talking with Lily, trying to piece together her story. Most of her answers were vague. She didn't know what town she was from or her full name. The mountain man had instructed her not to think about before, because it would make the bad thoughts come back. One thing was clear: whoever built this shelter had been planning it for some time. The construction was too elaborate for this to be an impulsive crime. When our colleagues arrived, we carefully brought Lily out. She seemed simultaneously frightened and fascinated by the open air, shielding her eyes against even the muted forest light. I left Garcia and 2 deputies in concealed positions near the shelter while I accompanied Lily down the mountain. The plan was to get her to town for medical examination, while we apprehended the mountain man when he returned. At the hospital, the examination revealed disturbing details. Lily was malnourished despite the food supplies in the shelter. There were no signs of sexual abuse, but she had old bruises and a half-healed fracture in her right arm that had never been properly set. The social worker gathered more information as Lily began to trust her. She thought she had been in the shelter since the snow was deep. She described the mountain man as tall with a beard and said he had saved her from bad people. He taught her from books and told her stories about how they would someday live together in a real house when it was safe. We sent her fingerprints and DNA to state authorities. Meanwhile, I returned to the mountain. Night had fallen, and Garcia reported no sign of the mountain man. We maintained our stakeout for 3 days. Nothing. Somehow, he knew we'd found the shelter. On day 4, our first real lead came in. Lily's fingerprints matched those of Eliza Thornton, reported missing from Riverview, 200 miles away, 14 months ago. She had vanished from a park while her mother was distracted. I drove to Riverview to speak with her parents. Mrs. Thornton collapsed when I told her we'd found her daughter alive. Her husband asked practical questions in a tight voice. "Is she okay?" I told them about her condition and what little we knew of her captivity. "Do you have any idea who might have taken her?" I asked. "Anyone with survival skills, construction experience, familiarity with your area?" They couldn't think of anyone specific. Then Mr. Thornton mentioned something that made me pause. There was a man, about 6 months before Eliza disappeared. He was working on a construction project a few doors down. He used to wave to Eliza when she played in the yard. Do you remember his name? Or who he worked for? I don't recall a name. The company was something like Mountain Valley Construction. They were renovating the Peterson house. Back in Pine Creek, I had Garcia look into Mountain Valley Construction. It was a small outfit based in Oak Ridge, specializing in remote cabin renovations and off-grid installations, perfect cover for someone with the skills to build a hidden shelter. Their employee records included a man named Victor Mercer, 42, who had left the company shortly after the Riverview project. His photos showed a tall, bearded man, matching Lily's description of the mountain man. Mercer had no violent criminal history, just minor offenses like trespassing on federal land. But his employment history was revealing. He'd worked for 3 different construction companies in the past decade, each time in areas where a child had gone missing. None of the cases had been connected previously because they crossed state lines. Was Eliza his first successful abduction after previous attempts? Or were there other shelters out there, other children? We put out an all-points bulletin for Mercer but discovered he'd abandoned his rental house in Pine Creek 3 days earlier, right after our discovery of the shelter. Neighbors described him as quiet, polite, a bit of a loner who worked in construction and was often away for days. One detail stood out. He had a collection of backpacking and wilderness survival guides. He told one neighbor he was preparing for the collapse of society, and that only those who could live off the land would survive. Meanwhile, Eliza was reunited with her parents. She recognized them, but there was confusion in her eyes, as if they were characters from a half-remembered dream. During an interview with a child psychologist present, Eliza revealed more about her time with Mountain Man. He had told her there had been a great disaster, and that he had rescued her when her parents were killed. He was keeping her safe until the world was good again. 2 weeks later, a Montana state trooper found an abandoned truck registered to Mercer at a trailhead near the Canadian border. The theory was that he had fled into the wilderness. But I had my doubts. Something about the abandoned truck felt too convenient. A man with Mercer's skills wouldn't make such a basic error unless he wanted the truck to be found. The shelter has been dismantled, its entrance sealed with concrete. Eliza is in therapy, slowly readjusting to normal life. On the surface, the case appears resolved. But some nights, I find myself driving the back roads of Pine Creek County, scanning the densely forested mountainsides. I think about how easily that shelter remained hidden, how many similar secluded spots exist in our wilderness areas. And I wonder what else might be hidden in these mountains, what secrets are buried beneath the surface of our quiet community. Because one thing has become painfully clear, The shelter we found wasn't built by a man acting on impulse. It was created by someone who had done this before and intended to do it again. Someone who might still be watching, waiting for us to lower our guard. Someone who understands the vastness of the wilderness and how easily people can disappear within it, both predator and prey. So I keep driving these mountain roads at night, my headlights sweeping across the tree line. Because deep down, I know the truth. We haven't found all his shelters yet. Thanks so much for watching. I can't express enough how much your support means. The likes, the comments, it all really helps the channel grow. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. I always take the time to read them. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on any new videos. See you next time.